22 years of development, north of 84 million Deutschmarks of public money, and a company very nearly bankrupted, all to procure nothing. A rotating chamber, caseless ammo, 2200 RPM hyperburst, and more. This was the rifle that was going to revolutionise warfare and give the West a much-needed edge in a Third World War that never came about. Today, the story of the most technologically advanced rifle the world has ever seen, and why it was just too much, too soon. The HK G11. What, you didn't actually think HK was going to lend me a real one, did you? Following the Second World War, Germany was carved in two. The West joined the brand new Nato alliance, while the East, that went under the control of the USSR, leaving Europe with a communist superpower right in its midst. And from there it seemed almost inevitable that the Cold War would eventually turn hot. That sooner or later, the standoff would boil over into a full-blown World War III. Of course, a Third World War never actually kicked off. Well, not yet anyway. But if you've ever caught yourself wondering how it might go, today's sponsor, Supremacy WW3, basically lets you run that experiment for yourself. It's a free-to-play strategy game where you take charge of a real country and get thrown into a modern global war against up to 99 other actual humans. And these matches run for weeks, so there's time for real planning, strategy, and revenge where required. It's the kind of game that rewards your time investment, not something you play for 5 minutes and forget about. You build your army, tanks, jets, subs, over 100 real weapon systems to unlock. You run the war economy, and then comes my favourite bit, the diplomacy. Making allies, then quietly stabbing them in the back, declaring war on real people on the other side of the planet, all to take over the world. And you can play it pretty much anywhere. PC, iOS, Android, so scan the QR code up there or tap the link down below. New players get a free elite railgun unit worth about $40, but only for the next 30 days. A huge thanks to Supremacy WW3 for supporting the channel. Now, back to the G11. So West Germany was rebuilt from the rubble of World War II and rearmed under Nato. And West Germany needed to be well armed. If your soldiers are gonna be outnumbered on their own soil, you want every single one of them to be as effective as possible. Which brings us rather neatly to the rifle in the soldier's hands. In late 60s West Germany, that was the G3, HK's own battle rifle. It's a fine weapon, but an old school one, and the data coming out of Vietnam was kind of highlighting an awkward truth. Soldiers miss a lot. One often quoted estimate from the era reckoned that something like 50,000 rounds of small arms ammunition were being fired for every one enemy actually hit. Adrenaline, poor visibility, a target that's moving and shooting back at you, the hit probability falls straight through the floor. The traditional fix is simply more bullets. Flick to automatic, hold down the trigger, and hose down the enemy. Except, there's kind of a catch. The instant your first round leaves the barrel, the rifle starts to climb. And by the second or third round of burst, you're no longer really aiming at your target, you're just sort of shooting around them. This thing is so heavy, this was a really dumb choice. So the West Germans asked a simple question. What if you could fire so quickly that you can get 2-3 rounds on target before the muzzle starts to climb? Well, that was the idea, but the trouble was going to be actually building it. Because to make 3 rounds leave that fast, HK would have to tear up more than a century of firearms design. And they didn't just tear up one page, they tore up the whole book all at once. So here's the first thing they threw out. The ammunition's brass case. It has to be fed into the chamber, the round fired, and then needs to be extracted and flung clear of the mechanism. That whole extract and eject sequence does take time. It adds weight, and it adds moving parts that can break. So in '68, HK teamed up with explosive specialist Diamond Nobel and got them working on the big one, trying to delete that case entirely. Caseless ammunition. It's exactly what it sounds like. You take a solid block of propellant with no brass around it and bury your round deep inside of it so that you just have one solid block to feed into the gun's mechanism, nothing to extract, nothing to eject. 1/3 of the normal feed, fire, eject cycle simply ceases to be. When a conventional round fires, it swells, seals up the chamber, keeping the screaming hot gases going exactly where you need them to go, down the barrel. Take away the brass case and gases are going to start going everywhere. HK's answer was the rotating breech, a chamber that could spin 90 degrees, grab a round, drop back down, and fire, and then repeat the whole thing over again. If you think that sounds complicated, yeah. An interesting technical hurdle that HK had to overcome was gases building up in the chamber that would normally escape during the ejection cycle. So they developed and patented a pressure relief diaphragm underneath the rifle, which allows gases to escape when they reach a certain level. So for your viewing delight, here's a HK G11 farting. And on paper, all the numbers look great. The 4.73mm caseless round was about half the weight of a standard Nato 5.56 and roughly 40% smaller, which meant that by the final version, a soldier could carry a 50-round magazine in about the same space and weight as a 30-round mag of ordinary ammo. And the magazine system was really slick. Because you didn't need that ejection port, the whole magazine could lie flat along the top of the rifle, pointing downwards, feeding straight into the system. No ejection port also means no need to worry about which shoulder you fire from, so HK could go bullpup without any of the usual ambidextrous issues. And like the later FNP90, by using a long horizontal top feed magazine, you eliminate one of the biggest drawbacks of a bullpup, that being the often not ambidextrous controls and slightly awkward magazine changes having to reach to the back of the action. Being a bullpup was also what allowed HK to cram a full-length barrel and that insanely complex firing mechanism into a reasonable size package, or certainly a reasonable length. Pretty tall. And then they had to invent the trick to make the hyperburst work, so that you could get those 3 rounds out the barrel before you felt the first one go off. In the G11, the barrel and the entire firing mechanism are not solidly locked into the rifle at all. They float inside of the outer shell. Pull the trigger and the whole assembly, barrel, breech, even the magazine, recoils backwards inside the housing, and it's only when it hits the end of its travel that it's going to shove the butt of the rifle into your shoulder and you'll feel the recoil. And that's kind of the whole Kraut space magic trick here. The internals of the rifle and the externals are completely decoupled from each other. The numbers they hit? Around 2,200 rounds a minute in that 3-round burst mode. All 3 rounds heading off downrange before you even felt the kick of the first one. But eventually, after many years trial and error, it worked. But it was also fiendish. Early versions leaked gas and wore out fast, and the whole contraption was so intricate that people who saw it working gave it the nickname the rapid-firing cuckoo clock. When your revolutionary warfighting rifle's being compared to Bavarian novelty timekeeping, it's a bit of a sign. It's beautiful engineering, but not remotely soldier-proof. Assault rifles are expected to take some serious abuse, be dropped in the mud, held out in the rain, and cleaned in a ditch with just a few rags and pull-throughs. What HK had built instead, a spinning breech, floating recoil assembly, top feed magazine, and a cam-driven timing sequence, all whirring away in perfect synchronization inside of a plastic sealed box. Between '68 and the late '80s, HK ground through roughly 14 major prototype generations, each one fixing the last one's sins. And here's the numbers that tell you everything. Over a multi-decade program, HK built a total of, at the high end of estimates, 1,000 rifles, with more conservative estimates putting the maximum number at around 265. Not 265,000, 265. That's how hard it was to produce a G11, and why I'm having to hold a piece of foam. By March '87, they felt they'd cracked it and had the G11 K1, the production standard model. And it looked like nothing else on the planet. No visible barrel, no obvious ejection port, although there is a little one underneath in case you ever get a dud round or you just need to unload the weapon. It looked less like a conventional weapon and more like something built for a sci-fi film. And in Bundeswehr field trials, the improved K2 version tested at around 50% better combat accuracy than the G3 that it was meant to replace. 50%. That's not an incremental improvement, that's a generational leap. So HK, they'd actually done it. Or so it seemed. Actually firing the thing though, was a bit of a mixed bag. On the one hand, the hyperburst delivered on its wild promise of firing so fast that you didn't feel the recoil until the third round had left the barrel. One trigger pull, one very loud bang, 3 holes clustered tight on target. But on the other hand, and here's the bit that the brochures kind of skip, the recoil doesn't disappear, it just gets deferred. The moment that that third round clears the barrel, the accumulated shove of all 3 arrive at your shoulder at once in one hefty delayed thump. So you get very clever recoil management for a few milliseconds. It's really not hard to imagine smaller soldiers developing a bit of a flinch on this thing. As for solving the big problem of requiring thousands of rounds to hit one enemy, it's kind of debatable if the 3-round hyperburst actually helps or hinders that goal. Sure, if you get a clear view of the enemy, if you range it correctly, if you follow all the marksmanship principles, if they're not moving too quickly, if there's no wind, then 3 rounds flying down range will increase hit probability. But that's an awful lot of ifs. More likely is that under battlefield stress, one of those things is gonna go wrong. So instead of just 1 round going wide or falling short, you're gonna have 3 missing in action. There's every chance that rather than reduce the thousands of shots fired to hit one enemy combatant, the G11 might have tripled the problem. By 89, the G11 was there, tantalizingly there. West Germany was lining up to buy them in big numbers, plans commonly cited at around 300,000 rifles. The Bundeswehr had trialled it and certified it. The US Army had pulled a version into its advanced combat rifle program. There was real NATO interest. 2 decades of madness were about to pay off, and then, on the 9th of November 1989, the Berlin Wall came down. Within months, the Cold War was effectively over. The Soviet threat, the entire reason this rifle existed, the threat of World War III that it had been engineered to win, just kind of evaporated. And Germany plunged headlong into reunification. Staggeringly expensive, all-consuming, the only thing on the government's mind for years. So it all came down to cold accounting. On the one side, a fantastic rifle that was fantastically expensive. On the other hand, there was the perfectly good rifle they already had, the G3. It fired standard NATO ammunition and could just soldier on until something else came along. And in '93, it was made official, the G11 would not be adopted. The stated reason being NATO standardization. Its unique caseless round matched nothing else in the entire alliance. So what actually replaced the G3 in the end? Well, not the Kraut space magic of the G11. Instead, it was the far more conventional G36, which okay, does have its own list of innovations, extensive use of polymer, a unique sighting arrangement, ambidextrous top-mounted charging handle. It's certainly an interesting system and it will get a video all of its own soon. But compared to the G11, it was far less innovative, and without the hyperburst, it's just nowhere near as cool. So the cost of all this development fun? Well, by the mid-90s, HK was buried under something like 180 million Deutschmarks of debt. The company only survived by being bought out by Britain's Royal Ordnance, soon folded into British Aerospace. And the rifle itself is now almost a ghost. We don't know how many survived. As far as I know, none were ever sold to the public. A handful sit in museums. The German army's got a collection. HK still has working examples and a small hoard of original ammunition. But they rarely, if ever, actually fire them these days, because that ammunition stockpile is finite. Diamond Nobel stopped making the caseless ammunition decades ago, giving each round a value of something crazy like between $200 and $400 per round. So the fastest firing, most advanced rifle ever created is pretty much now unusable, even by the people who built the thing. It's interesting to imagine just what the future could hold. With modern technology, modern optics, modern production and material science, could we one day return to the caseless hyperburst concept with modern technology and produce the next great generational leap in weapons technology? It's fascinating to wonder what might win World War III one day. The tried and tested? Or the radical and new? Hey, speaking of World War III, another huge thanks to Supremacy WW3 for sponsoring this video. Check them out using the QR code on screen now, or from the link in the description or the pinned comment below. Go check them out, the game's fantastic, you won't be disappointed.